Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Central Texas Life. Ann Harder here, and I have been looking forward to this sit-down for many months now.
Yes.
Lauren Adams and Todd Unger, who are the primetime anchors at 25 News, KXXV. And I happened to be there, Lauren, when you came into the station to interview for the job.
That's right.
And you and Todd went off into the studio and did your little kind of sample test run together. And I thought, if they don't lock this lady up. So then when I saw in June that you were coming on, I thought,
Yay.
they did good.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm
They
glad
did
to
good.
be here. Yes, definitely.
Okay, so let's start off with you, Lauren. You're the most recent hire, I guess. Came from South Carolina.
I did.
Tell me about where you're from originally, though.
North of Atlanta, about an hour north, in a little town called Dahlonega, Georgia.
So small town girl. That's
Small
good.
town girl in the South, yeah. And our claim to fame in Dahlonega is it's where gold was first discovered ever in the United States.
Really?
And we have a little college called University of North Georgia now. I went there for my first 2 years, and it's a military school, and they allowed women. It was the first military college in the nation to allow women back in the early 1900s, I believe.
Those are amazing milestones. Yeah. Okay. All right. So Todd, what about you? Where did you grow up?
So I actually grew up about 20 minutes outside of Portland, Oregon.
Oh my.
I know, which is interesting. A
West
lot of people
Coast,
are surprised to hear that. At that time, Portland was very different than the Portland of the last 10 years. But it was a great childhood. Lived in one spot my first 18 years, and then went to University of Denver, and then started doing this TV thing and moving all over.
Well, and that is what the business is all about. And you both have such stunning resumes. I mean, most of that is just all the places you've worked and accolades and awards that you've gotten and nominations for Lone Star Emmys. And I think you won an Emmy, I think, for Hurricane Harvey.
That's right, down in
So,
2017. We just passed the 5-year anniversary of that.
Isn't that incredible?
I know,
Yeah, I guess so. I'm kind of an anomaly to be born in Waco and work for 25 years at 25. So it's just so lovely to see the torch carried on by the two of you. And so let's talk about some of those big stories. I mean, that's what a lot of people want to talk to me about, and there have been quite a few here locally. But Lauren, I mean, let's start off early in your career. Where all have you worked?
So I've got my first job in Jefferson City, Missouri. I was a producer and then a fill-in reporter. And then I got to go to Dothan, Alabama, and I was a military reporter there, so I had the chance to go to Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom. That was in 2006. That was a big story for me. While I was in Alabama, we also had a tornado that hit us high school. It hit Enterprise High School, and it killed 8 students there. So we were first on the scene, and that was of course, one of those stories. The president visited and saw the aftermath, and you just kind of follow that through as they build a new school, and then they honor those students who died. And then after 4 years in Alabama, I went to Knoxville, Tennessee, where I was a main anchor there, and I got to cover the Tennessee Volunteers. That was fun. We had a church shooting. That was one big story there that I covered. And, being there for 10 years, there are lots of others I can't really remember. And then I went to San Diego to work on the West Coast.
Oh, wow. That's the big time.
That's what I wanted, is to work on the West Coast at a big time TV station where you were covering breaking
market.
news.
Yeah.
Right.
That was fun. It was fun. My mom got sick, and it was expensive to live there. So
That's
two
what
things
I understand.
combined. I moved back home and took care of my mom, and then I worked in Atlanta for about 2 years. Of course, that was going when they had all the riots at CNN, and so those were some big stories there. And then I got married to somebody who was in the military, and that's how I got to South Carolina. And then we just got stationed here, and he's at Fort Hood, so that's why I got the job here, and I'm so grateful to have it. I just feel like it's a great fit for me.
Oh, well, and you are a great fit for the station, and I'm just thrilled. But so long term.
Well,
Wait,
the
25 years
military.
or 25.
You just don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So he's planning on, hopefully we get to stay here for 3 years. He's talked about hopefully getting to stay for maybe finishing out his career. He has 8 years left.
Well, that would be fabulous.
That would be fabulous. My fingers are crossed.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Oh, exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to come back to talk about some of the other stories
Yes.
I know that you have covered. Todd, so
Yes.
you said you went to school in
Denver. University of Denver. And my first job out of there was graduate on Saturday. And that Monday, I was working in western Nebraska. So there's a little market out there in North Platte, and it covers a lot of area. And it's Market 207 or something like that. There's about 210 media markets, in case you don't know. And this is 207. The smaller ones are in Alaska.
Well, listen, this local market, I think it went from, what is it now? Tell me.
80 now.
Oh,
80-ish.
we were like, I want to say 97 when I started.
It's gone up.
So this local market has gotten so much bigger.
And
It
for Todd to be
certainly
able to get
has.
a job right after college, that's unheard of. I mean,
It really
normally you
is.
have to wait. So
Right.
that's
Well, it
great.
was. Nowadays,
Yeah, it's different.
graduates, the industry
Right.
has changed quite a bit.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
So I was there for about a year and a half. Then I was in Omaha for a couple of years, work at the Fox affiliate. I was in Albuquerque for a couple of years after that, which was an interesting. I love New Mexico.
Oh, yeah. Isn't it beautiful?
It's
It is.
beautiful.
It is.
Albuquerque,
It's hot.
it's hot. Yeah.
Texas is hot.
And
Yeah,
Is it hot?
Texas.
she's got.
Oh, well, it's
Well, depends
a
on where you
dry
are.
heat.
Yeah.
say.
I would say dry heat, and they have more of a winter by and large.
Yes.
than,
Yeah, I
than
bet so.
Texas. Yeah. But that was a beautiful place to work. And then I was in Dallas for 6 years at FAA. So I got there when
Now
I was.
that's the big time.
Yes.
Yep, it was. And when I went there, it was owned by Belo, which was this huge Texas
Sure.
media company, and it was their flagship. So I got a little taste of that, even though it wasn't the taste that they had in the 90s and early 2000s when they used to really, really, really cover stuff like crazy.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience, great station. I loved it. And then I left there and did a documentary for a while over in Europe, which was totally different, like nothing
Well,
I'd
that's
ever
interesting.
done
So
that.
how did
Yeah.
you get that gig? How did that work out?
I had a agent at the time who kind of helped me
Oh,
get
really?
it. Yeah. And so it was a month going to 5 or 6 different countries in Europe. We were chasing around this guy who was on the run for financial crimes. And the pandemic, it still hasn't been put out. The pandemic really put a damper on some
Oh,
of the
so-
stuff.
so
that
your
needed
work
to
has
do.
not-
It still hasn't been
Oh, that's
shown,
something to
no.
look
So,
forward to. Yeah.
We're hoping early next year, but who
That's
knows?
neat.
Yeah.
You'll have to come back on and
I know.
talk
I
about
will.
that
I will.
when that
I will
yeah.
come back on.
Yeah.
And then I got engaged, and my wife Amanda, she was born here, and her family is still largely in the area. They're here, and then up a little bit in Midlothian and Dallas, and so kind of this
Easy to
80-mile
get
stretch.
to. Yeah, easy to get to though.
And so it was a great opportunity, and I wanted to try anchoring more full time. So I had always been out in the field more, and this was a
Right.
chance to kind of try something a little different. And it kept us close to everything we like.
Oh, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
been
And
great.
you're still active in things happening in Dallas, though, right?
I am. Yeah, we still go up there quite a bit. Her brother owns a popular brewery. He started one
That's
cool.
fun.
called
Yeah.
Celestial Beer Works. So that's really cool. It's right near Love Field, and so we're still up there. Once or twice a month, we kind of go back for the day or for a night, and it's good to. I think it's good to keep a pulse on what's happening up there because our coverage area butts right up against DFW, and so there can be
Right.
bleed over and stories and stuff.
Right. I mean, the folks in Hillsboro, and so they're
Yeah.
kind of left in the lurch.
Yep.
And so we would end up, I know in the newsroom, we'd end up doing Hillsboro stories because we knew they were watching, but they really weren't technically in our area.
I know it's kind of a middle ground, and there are some big stories which we'll talk about. But you think about like West, that was right on the
now
line.
that exactly,
Yeah.
and that brought you
That's
down
the
in
first
this.
time, right?
Yeah.
I'd only been at FAA for 3.5 months when that's happened.
Really?
In April of 2013.
Oh.
So that was kind of my first big story for them, and I think I must have done 20-something live shots in 12
No
hours.
kidding.
And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know. And I remember when I went to KXXV for my interview, you were there, and we kind of were chatting, and that came up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and Bruce, you came in on or I don't remember.
Well,
how
it was
happened.
okay. Well,
There's so many stories.
Well, and of
but-
course, it happened, in the late afternoon, evening.
Yeah,
That
it
was
was
when
about 7,
I
I
was.
think.
Yeah, I was still on my dinner break. We'd
Right.
take our dinner break, and of course, we always had this kind of running joke that, all bets are off if the Alico building blows up.
Right.
So,
God.
okay, it's like, right. That's going to be a breaking story that's going to trump anything else we were doing.
Right.
Well, so I drive in and he meets me in the parking lot. He goes, "There's been an explosion." I'm thinking, "Yeah, you're kidding, right? Or it's the Alico, right?" And he goes, "No, really, there was an explosion." So that started it, and of course we were on the air. He and I think we sat down in there about maybe 7:45-ish, 8 o'clock, and I think we got up at 1 a.m. to leave the studio. Yeah. So have you had any of those kind of anchoring where you're just on from can to can't, as they say in Texas?
We had when all the COVID-19 stuff started, there was a lot of continuous coverage because you'd have President Trump speaking, then you'd have the governor speaking, so nothing was really coordinated. So you'd have to kind of tap dance in between.
And so you were tossing to these press conferences. And
so that was a lot of it. But fortunately, in the last couple of years, minus some standoffs and stuff, we haven't had a biker shootout or
oh gosh, that's another one.
I know. All these.
Yeah, thinking of those fun stories. Yeah,
the weather events. You've had a couple weather events.
Weather,
and weather always. But people would call and fuss. Why are you breaking into my store? Well, now, if it's your mother or grandmother that the tornado is heading toward their house, wouldn't you want them to know about it? And I would tell folks, it's great that we bring the news, that we inform people and sometimes entertain them, but you can die from weather.
Yeah.
So it's the most important thing we do.
Absolutely. And I think, Matt takes that incredibly
very
seriously. And he's
he
very
is the
good.
best. Yeah.
And when he's on for 4 or 5 hours, which happened a couple of times this last spring, you've got to be in there, and we'll talk about what's happening on Twitter now, or, the pictures or the footage that comes in. So we try and help where you can, but he's really the marathon guy with those events. He's so good.
Well, he is. He understands the science of it, and as you say, he is so passionate about it. But again, the bottom line is keeping people safe.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. So you covered Hurricane Harvey. Have you ever been out in the field covering
hurricanes?
Storms? Yeah.
Yes. So I worked down in Dothan, Alabama, which is about an hour north of Panama City. So when Katrina came through, I mean, it hit Destin, and then it also hit Mobile, and then it hit New Orleans. So we covered that, and Hurricane Ivan was another big one, and then there was one other one. But the thing about hurricanes is they're coming for days, but there's nothing you can do about it, and you just don't know exactly where that eye is going to hit.
That spaghetti
But when you're sitting
graphic,
there in the middle of that storm, and it's just the wind is blowing and the rain is coming down, it's scary.
Is it? Yeah. And because it just goes on and on and on.
Yes.
And sometimes you'll have, like with Harvey, the actual storm was bad, but it was really the flooding, the aftermath, and people weren't thinking about that in Houston. So, I mean, the storm had been bad coming up the coast, but it wasn't anything that Texas had not seen before. And then the flooding was just
wasn't
torrential.
it Harvey where the flooding happened in that parking garage and 10 people died?
Yeah,
that was Harvey,
Yeah, and there was just so much flooding around Houston. I think it was the wettest domestic hurricane. So Hawaii had one that had been more rain, but never anything like that. And Texas is not equipped to handle that kind of rainfall. And so it was, so you just don't know kind of what's going to be the worst part of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what happened with Katrina. I mean, it was the flooding that broke the levees.
Not the actual storm.
Yeah. Well, news coverage, it can take a toll on reporters. I mean, I know that, and I experienced that after 9/11 because I was solo anchoring at 25 at the time.
Wow.
My co-anchor had not decided to re-sign his contract.
So it
was in September. And guess what happened on September 11th? And so, it was surreal. It was a surreal time. But I remember toward the end, that was on a Tuesday, and toward the end of the week, I was home just having a little lunch and looking on my TV, clicking through, and saw some beautiful video from Alaska where they're panning for gold. Okay? I mean, random. But I just saw that beautiful scenery and just the magnitude of what had happened and how it was so hard to wrap our minds around the level of evil that could do that. And I just started weeping. I was weeping, and I thought it has to happen sometimes. So did you have that experience like after a big story where that release valve just needed to?
Yes, but I don't remember. There's been several, but I don't remember.
I was going to say, you just cried.
I remember, in Knoxville, they brought in the police department and some therapists and had them talk to us just about how, you're not the first person that's right there, but you're it's a second. It's called a secondary.
Yes,
and it affects you, but you just keep going. You just push through it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever had, and let me say that I think now, like, the industry is a lot better about addressing and talking about that kind of thing than it was 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. You were kind of just supposed to just kind of
just buck it up. Buck up and
Yeah.
And here in Waco, greater Waco area, obviously we report Killeen and, the whole area. But when you live somewhere long enough, you're going to know people that are going to be part of a news story. And that really can be difficult.
Yeah, I think that can hit home, obviously, in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the importance, though, of local media is, you hear so much talk about the national media.
Yeah.
But local, people, this is your community.
Exactly.
There really is not some agenda or anything. There just isn't,
No.
This is where you live.
Well, and I think that's why local news is really kind of the last bastion of news coverage. And that's why it's so important. Wonderful people like you are, continuing on when the old people go, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this. It is a scary time to be a journalist, too, because you don't know how people are going to come at you.
Well, that is true.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
scary.
something that has changed.
Yes,
Yeah.
because in
Radically.
your generation, I mean, that's why I got into it, because it was seen as a great profession and people looked up to you and it was honorable. But now, I mean, it's when you tell somebody, you don't know if they're going to be excited or hate you. So it's a little scary.
Yes, and now that with the whole era of the MMJ, the multimedia journalists, young women, many of them, and they are setting up their own live shots. They're doing everything themselves, and that never used to be the case. It was always a photog, or if it was a live shot, you maybe have somebody running the truck and all that, and now they're pretty vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Very, yeah.
They are very vulnerable.
But the reason we do this is because we want to keep journalism alive. Like, it's so important. I mean,
yes.
you had Donald Trump who said it's fake news, but everybody wouldn't even know about fake news had it not been for journalists and social media, putting it out there. So it's just so important to keep journalism going.
Right. Right.
And to your point, I think the local is so important too, because
Yes.
you do want to know what's, who's saying what at the city council meeting,
Right.
or who, that kind of stuff is.
It does
still
affect
important.
people.
Yeah, it does.
It does.
And so I think that's why I think actually the outlook for local journalism is a little bit more optimistic than some people think.
I think so.
I think there will always be some form of it.
Yeah, maybe not newspapers. I mean, let's face
Right.
it.
Yeah,
and even
newspapers-
local news. Let's
Yeah.
be honest.
Yeah.
Viewership.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, especially when the internet came out. But people still need, like, newspapers have done a great job of putting it digitally online.
Exactly.
So people go online quick to get the
Right.
news. I mean, I do to find out.
Well, we all
stuff.
do. I mean, you've got your smartwatch. I left mine at home, but it's but I'm getting pushes from 25 News all the time, and I'm keeping up to date. I feel like with important stories through the day, and so that I know has changed viewer habits.
Yes. There's that word.
Yep.
That term.
Viewer habits.
It's habits that they have. Well, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, going to learn a little bit more about these two fine folks. So you stay with us.
Frozen heroes. Gonna tell you about frozen heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Mike.
and we have a fantastic new podcast to tell you about. Bros, Foes, and Heroes. It's the two of us looking into the world of comics, breaking down some characters that you may have never heard of, and some that are just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so Zach comes up with a character each time, and I go into it just completely blind. I don't know who this person is or what their abilities are or anything, and basically I guess we kind of go over their origin story and just some of the ridiculous stuff that maybe, especially Golden Age stuff.
Oh, Golden Age stuff is always the best, and we will make sure to highlight all of the shenanigans and just absolute weirdness of everything.
Yeah, that's right. So subscribe today and follow us on Instagram at Bros, Foes, Heroes.
And if you don't, I know where you live. Not really, but please subscribe.
Bros and foes and heroes. Gonna tell you about bros and foes and heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Welcome to One Star Rewind, a new podcast about those dreaded one-star reviews that every business owner hates to receive, but yet every customer loves to read. During this podcast, we will peel back that one-star review to better understand how it happened, when it happened, and what the business owner is doing after receiving that one-star review. This podcast will be about love, hate, and laughter. On One Star Rewind, we will meet with real business owners who will tell their stories and how they do rely on reviews for their business. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or download us at roguemedianetwork.com. Please subscribe, but only rate and review for not a one-star review. Join us each time for a new review and a new story.
Hi, this is Sarah,
And I'm Carter.
and this is Some of Our Thoughts.
We're two Southern sommeliers, and we want to share everything we love and know about wine. We started hanging out during quarantine and cooking and drinking and listening to music, and we just thought this would be a great way to bring everything we know to you guys.
We will make wine knowledge and food pairings easy and approachable. So put on your favorite vinyl, grab your favorite glass of wine, tune into our show, and let's have some fun.
Wine and
vinyl.
So check us out on roguemedianetwork.com or wherever you get your favorite podcast. We'll be talking about a lot.
And we're back with Lauren Adams and Todd Unger, 25 news anchors. And we've been talking about their varied careers and now their lives here in Central Texas. And we're hoping they're very deep roots that they're putting in here. But Lauren, I mean, you've done some big stories as well. We've talked about some of the hurricanes and that kind of thing. But there was a huge murder story there in South Carolina, your most recent gig. And let's talk about the Murdoch Murphy, because it was not something we picked up here. It was kind of a regional thing there, but it was a very big deal.
Right. And it started off just regional, but then People Magazine started calling, and that's when you know, oh, it's going to get
It's
really
going to go big.
Because it had all the makings of like murder mystery movies or, you know, TV shows. I mean, it started, so it's a prominent attorney family, the Murdochs from South Carolina. Back in the early 1900s, you had the original Murdoch. Well, 4 generations since then, so I guess the great-great-grandson, he was involved in a boating accident that killed a female. He was 19. He was drinking underage. Well, he and his mom end up murdered, I think it was, a couple of years later.
Well, he was just about to have his first arraignment. It was 2 years, but he was about to be arraigned for that crime. I watched a 3, maybe 4-part series. I said I might have fallen asleep if it was 4 parts, but
I know.
but I
and
didn't wake up to see the end of the. But it was beautifully done. I think I saw it on Netflix. I think anyway, the Murdaugh murders. So look it up if you're not familiar with it, because it is a fascinating story.
Right. He turned up dead with
privilege.
his mom. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have these 2 people who've been murdered on their farm. You know, we go out there to report and cover. It's this big area. And then you learn about the Murdaughs. Well, then you don't think anything of it. But then a few months later, the husband of the woman that was found dead and the father of the son that was found dead, he puts a 911 call in saying that somebody tried to shoot him in the head. Well, we're like, okay, wait a minute. That's awfully ironic that this wife and son just ended up dead. Now somebody's trying to shoot him. What's happening? It turns out he had hired somebody to try to shoot him, to make it look like, and so that he wanted to get the insurance money for his other son. And now we're finding out that he was into drugs, prescription drugs, allegedly, and he had just asked a guy that he was selling dope to just shoot him, to kill him, to his son. But anyway, now he's in jail and he's charged
And he
with
looks
those
kind of like the
murders.
boy next door. I mean, redheaded guy, just looks like a
And
ordinary
everybody
kind of,
knows them because they would go to all the, South Carolina games, and they have all this money, so they've been running around in all these
Oh, yeah.
circles, right?
Yeah.
So it's just seeing, a prominent family being brought down, and you know how.
even their housekeeper.
Oh,
died
she ended up
under
dying, and
really mysterious circumstances, and
She
then
fell and hit her head.
he wanted to sue himself or something in order to get insurance money. I mean, the guy was
he did.
just
He
the
successfully
most crooked
did.
thing ever.
Yeah, he went to
created.
the housekeeper's family and said, "I've got a lawyer that will sue and
Me,
get you
yeah.
money," and then he never gave that money that they won to the family.
Yeah, $500,000 or
Right,
something.
so
Really,
that's-
it
it
being
is-
more like $4 million. Unbelievable story.
Crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
if you haven't seen that, I mean, that series was.
Yeah.
It was. Of course, I was watching it last night late. Stayed up till 1 a.m. watching it because I wanted to see if you showed up in any of the.
Well, and every day I
any of
get
the
up, I'll
video.
just Google the name to see if anything new has come out, because
Yes,
it's
it's still going on.
It's an
yeah.
ongoing, and the name Murdaugh is Murdough.
Yeah.
So, but it's pronounced Murdaugh, because we had a
Murdoch,
big
yeah.
meeting in the newsroom. Like, how are we going to pronounce this as a station?
Well, because I did hear it during the course of this series, Murdaugh, which would be probably, if it's maybe Scottish, I don't know. So anyway, I heard it pronounced both ways, but yeah, very interesting story. And of course, here in Central Texas, we've had a lot of big stories. Some really, really bad people. But, I guess that's kind of the fun part for you moving into a new area, is to kind of find out those historic stories.
Well, and you notice that news continues to happen.
Yeah, it does.
You go into
Funny how
a
that
new
works.
city, and it continues to happen. It goes on, and it's just kind of like we're recording history. Wherever you go, it's still happening, and we're recording it.
Yeah. Well, it is just a delight to talk with you both and to learn more about you. But I like to end these little visits with it's something that the late great James Lipton would do on Inside the Actors Studio. Are you familiar? Do you?
No,
Yeah,
tell
you're
me.
too young.
I've watched
Yeah,
a
but
couple of
both
the
you
old
guys
ones.
are so young. Well, anyway, I'll tell you another story off the air about one of my guests who was like 30 years old, and I thought, she's not. She goes, "Oh no, I was in New York, and I went to Inside the Actors Studio. So
wow.
I was there for 2 of the. I went, you're kidding me." Anyway, it was great. So we'll start off. This is sort of my take on it. So, to each of you, what is your favorite word?
I like serendipitous. That's a fun one.
Good,
In
that is a
movie,
fun one.
Serendipity.
Yeah.
My favorite word, not like an on-air word, just because there are certain
Just-
words that you can't really,
Right.
you can't. I'm not talking about bad. I'm just saying, like, there's a certain way you write for TV, and then there's a certain.
Oh,
word,
I know. That's
yeah.
true.
I've always liked the word permeate, kind of
Oh, I do
to
too.
spread throughout.
funny.
It sort of sounds like
Yeah, it's
what
kind
it
of a-
means.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of.
I remember in 8th grade when I learned that word,
Yeah.
and Ms. Brown was my teacher, and she was like, "Perfume will permeate the room."
I just remember reading. I think I was in 7th grade, and I remember very distinctly. It was, a set of kind of words that are a little bit more advanced, and it was just this verb that kind of stuck out. Like, permeate. That's
That's so
interesting.
funny. I
Yeah.
used that word this weekend. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Okay, your least favorite word.
Well, I use it too much, even when I write copy sometimes, and it's that.
The word that.
You know, like
Oh,
that,
that.
or that, yeah.
That, yeah.
You know, and usually you can
Take that
just take
out.
it out. Right, take that out. And sometimes there's a reason for using it if you're trying to really emphasize something. but
Correct,
I
yeah.
think it becomes a crutch. So
yeah, well, that's good.
I don't know. Maybe can't. Like it's
Yeah.
a very negative word. So
Right.
don't say that.
I hear that
word.
a lot. I hear that. Do you have, and this is off topic, but do you have a phrase you just don't like to say on the air that trips you up? For me, it was military helicopter. I would try to change the military helicopter.
Oh gosh. Now I'm gonna say
now
that.
you're gonna say it. Sorry about that, but
There was one recently where I had to say, I think it was artifacts,
Oh my goodness.
but it was, you know, there's sometimes when you're in the studio and the prompter, it just doesn't look right.
No.
And so when you get a lot of A words together or something together, your
Yeah.
brain starts to think, oh, I must be reading this wrong.
Yes.
And then you always trip up. So when there's a lot of words that just appear in one sentence that start with the same thing,
Yeah.
I have trouble with that sometimes.
yeah, yeah.
And when you're reading the teleprompter, you have to be caffeinated up.
Isn't that the truth?
Right? Because sometimes it'll trip you up and you'll be like, wait, I practiced that, but why is it looking like that right now?
Right.
I think my favorite blooper happened when the prompter was messing. I'm sure it doesn't mess up anymore, but back in the olden days,
does.
in the old days, and this even predates me, they would run the scripts through.
Okay.
And it would show up the actual printed script. Well, we were doing this, and it would get a glitch, and it would just skip. And so I'm reading a story about Crocodile Dundee, and I'm just reading it's a Croco airball on a free throw
Is that what you said?
because it jumped to sports.
Well, I used to work with an anchor, and this is a running joke at the news station because it was literally, but litter and then really was on the bottom.
Oh,
so
no.
he said light rally
Yeah.
on air instead of literally.
Well, neither of those are too bad. I mean, if people want to see some real bloopers, they go to YouTube.
Oh man, yeah,
There.
we had a morning anchor that instead of they flushed a Koran down the toilet, they flushed a Korean down the toilet.
Oh no! Instead of a crayon,
No, Korean.
right?
Korean
Oh,
instead
okay.
of a Korean.
Yeah, instead of Koran. Anyway,
Korean.
there's
Okay,
plenty
gotcha.
of them. Okay,
Yeah.
so what turns you on spiritually, creatively, or
spiritually.
emotionally?
When I'm a big runner. I run every morning about 5
Good.
miles, and running gets me in that zone, like spiritually. It's just like that's when I start just thanking and just being just so blessed for everything I have. So that's what gets me going.
Good.
I think, and I've been playing since I was a little boy, but golf is probably like my
Good.
relaxing
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
zen zone, even though it's not very zen because it's a very frustrating
I was
game.
gonna say.
But there are moments when you're kind of out on a course and maybe it's late at night
But
and you're
it's so
playing by
beautiful,
yourself and it's
yeah.
just kind of
Peaceful, yeah. Oh
Yeah.
no, it is.
Yeah.
I get that. I watch it on TV, and they make it look so easy too.
I know. They do.
Yeah.
They do.
So, what turns you off spiritually, emotionally, or creatively?
Negativity.
Yeah,
I like to stay away from that.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a good one and something I have to work on myself sometimes. And I think another one is being rushed or just kind of, even though the nature of our job is sometimes you are rushed.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that can actually be a good thing. It can make you perform during a certain, situation. But just in general, day-to-day life, I don't like being rushed or feel like you got to be in a hurry.
Yes.
What sound do you love the most?
A horse galloping and neighing just came to mind. I love
That's
that.
neat. I've never heard that before. That's good.
That is pretty good. I think because of where I grew up in Oregon, it's rain. I love the sound.
I
of
do
rain.
Oh
too.
yeah, I
And
do
we
hear
would-
that a lot.
You would have months and months
Yeah.
where just every day you have showers. And when I was a little kid, my mom would always leave our window open because it's usually 50s or 60s there.
Mm-hmm.
And but I just remember lots of rain. Yeah.
What sound do you hate?
Alarms.
Right.
Not
Well,
big on
y'all
those.
work later in the day.
Yeah.
That second day part was way easier than doing mornings, I will say.
Yeah, mornings you have to get up at early.
And have makeup on. Yeah, I don't know how they do it. What other profession would you like to try or to have tried?
Okay, so I have two. Earlier on in my career, it would have been a forensic. What is it when the police officer does homicide scenes? Forensic pathologist. Is that it?
Pathologist, yeah.
Right.
So that's what
Baylor
I-
had a big program on
Because
that,
I feel like
but-
we do that kind of anyway as journalists. You show up to a scene, you
Yes.
try to figure out what
Figure out what
happened,
happened.
because we've got to talk to people. You got to make sure you don't talk to the wrong people. So I think, but now later in my career, I thought being a lawyer, I would have hated it early on because it entailed so much reading in college, and I just wasn't there yet mentally. But now I think being a lawyer would be fun to go in, and I would have to be a prosecuting attorney because I hate it when a defense attorney is fighting. And I know that is our right as Americans.
Right.
It's hard sometimes when you
I know.
know that they're guilty because you see all the evidence. But
Yes.
being an attorney, I think, would be fun.
Okay.
It's funny you said that because I was going to say
Yeah.
lawyer as well. And I think some great investigative reporters do have a law background.
Yes, they do.
And
Right, which is good because
good.
then
It
that
is good.
keeps the station from getting sued.
Right, yeah.
Which is always a good thing.
That's right. And I think that, I don't know, I guess just something about being a journalist for a while, the legal system does start to intrigue you more and more, just about how it works and how in some cases it's unfair, you know,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
injustices are,
Right.
You
Like
know,
in South
so-
Carolina.
yeah, I think.
And they got away
Yeah.
with everything. They were just
They
paying
did.
people off.
It was crazy. It was
But they
crazy.
finally got caught. So
So what job do you know you would not want to do?
I mean, being out in the heat and like working like on the highway, the risk of getting hit, and you're out there laying asphalt. I mean, I look up to them so much. 'Cause
Isn't
I'm
that the
like,
truth?
That is so difficult. That's difficult work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think and it's in my dad's side of the family. They come from a long line of farmers, and they still own some family farms in Nebraska. But it's not that I would not want to do it. It's just it's such hard work.
Yeah.
And I think farmers and more ranchers here in Texas, but they're so underappreciated, and it's
Yeah, because they
backbreaking.
work
Yeah.
morning to
It's-
night.
backbreaking work.
For
Yeah.
sure. Every time you eat, you need to
Yeah.
be grateful for a farmer. Well, finally, what do you want to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, here's your mom.
Uh-oh.
That'd be great.
Yeah. You're going to make me cry.
I'm gonna cry.
Probably just welcome.
Yeah.
Be happy that you made it.
Yeah.
Life
Amen.
has ups and downs.
Amen.
Yeah. And,
Well.
yeah, I'm glad you tilted it my way. Thank you.
Oh, listen, it has been a delight to get to sit here with you guys and to watch you each evening. And again, 5, 6, and 10, right?
You got it. Yep.
If
Yes.
that hasn't changed.
No.
It's still the same.
Lauren Adams, Todd Unger, thank you both.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes,
And
this
thank
has
you
been
for
great.
being with us. Join us again for Central Texas Life.
Central Texas Life with Ann Harder is part of the Rogue Media family. Be sure to check out our other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate this show 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.